but for me it was incredibly significant. There was this Anglican that would come and visit me, and he was an evangelical conservative, not the liberal who said homophobia was not of God. And this guy would see me in the cell, and because I was locked up so much, I was quite would be the word that I'm looking for. I was quite unstable. Sometimes I'd be screaming like a dog. Sometimes I'd be cutting myself. Sometimes I'd get my cup, if I could find a paper cup when I was out of my cell, maybe getting a shower. Some other inmate would leave a paper cup, because they wouldn't give me a paper cup. But I'd find one and I'd get it into my cell. I'd stick it in my toilet and just start flushing my toilet. Before you knew it, I had water pouring into the hallway and water pouring into the other inmate cells, and then they would start screaming and swearing because they didn't quite want the flood that I had. And then the guards would be swearing, and this is the kind of thing I'd be doing. But this Anglican would come. They took away all my clothes. They put me in an asbestos baby gown. And so I had cut marks all over my arms. I was in this asbestos gown. I had water because they wouldn't clean my cell. They cleaned my two neighbors. But my cell had for a week this much water in it. I'd sit on my little concrete table and jump in the water when the nurse would come by, and I'd laugh. So they just thought I was nuts, and they wrote me off. And this was probably 2 months into my 6 months in the segregation. This Anglican would come every week, and he'd say, "Bill, I'm not giving up on you because I believe God has a plan for you." Now, in all this behavior, the one book I was allowed to read, because they wouldn't give me any other books. I had no privileges. The other inmates had books. They could read Louis L'Amour, the cowboy or whatever. The only book I could have, because by law you had to have it, was the Bible if you wanted it. I had put that book under my pillow after all this behavior in the daytime, just to be a little bit closer to God. And some morality started changing. I started thinking, violence is wrong. And then this homosexual was brought down there. He was kind of an educated guy, which was unusual. Most of the guys in segregation were very marginal. They were often violent. They were often homeless. This guy, his father was actually a judge. So most of us were down there because we were dangerous. He was down there for his own protection. And he committed a massive fraud. I think it was $250,000, and that was in the 1980s. That he wouldn't divulge where the money was, so he had to sit there for a year. One day, him and I were arguing about abortion. And, usually when you're in segregation, you're, F this, F that, and, nothing very, very edifying. I was saying it's a human being, and we've got to respect life. And the whole range, the whole segregation went quiet. They never had this kind of debate. And then this guy was saying, well, what about starving women in Africa, and on and on. And we just went back and forth for an hour. That was the first time I defended life. And then I thought, when I was in that cell, I'm going to become a nurse. And that's the most bizarre thought. I was banned by court order from my high school. And, when I was in juvenile, I never finished high school. And then, here I am in segregation, basically considered a complete lunatic. And all of a sudden, I want to be a nurse, and I'm a glue sniffer to boot. Anyways, I prayed, and I asked God to help me become a nurse. I behaved a little bit better in seg, and I eventually got a few more privileges. I eventually could have books. Eventually, I did a grade 11 correspondence course on history or something. And then I was released. Now, when I was released, I was put in a homeless shelter because I had no friends, no family. Actually, for 3 days, I went to a psychiatric hospital. And by now, I knew I could get out, so I started acting normal and told them that I want to have a wife and kids and a job. And no, I'm not hearing voices or anything like that. So out the door, I went into the homeless shelter. Things did start changing for me. I was still doing drugs. I still did a few more crimes. But now I was starting to go to church a little bit more. And now I was trying to hold odd jobs. In 1989 of December, I swore off theft altogether. I was flat broke. I went to a car. I saw a bag, and the car was unlocked. And I was going to open the door and steal the bag. And then it was like God was telling me, Bill, you've done this so many times. You really want to go that route again. And then I said, Lord, I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to do it. And then it almost as an act of faith, I said, I don't have a job. I don't have a place to live, but I need a little bit of money. And I started panhandling by the bus depot in Toronto now. It was at Yonge and Bay and Queen. I made $100 in 1 hour. Just everyone was giving coins to me. And then this Christian lady came and gave me her business card and told me I could work in sales with her. That was where the change really happened. I wound up in her church. She actually became my first girlfriend, and then we broke up, but that's another story. Anyway, she actually got me into the real world.